Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Jasmine Yunel Rodriguez, and I'm with the Open Space Institute. We're excited to welcome you to this introductory webinar on the Greater Philadelphia Land Protection Program. We're thrilled to see such interest in this program and to have organizations, community leaders, municipalities, conservation partners, and other stakeholders joining us from across the region. Thank you for taking time out of your day to be here with us. Today's webinar is scheduled from noon to 1, and we'll do our best to end on time. Before we get started, just a few quick housekeeping notes. Today's webinar is being recorded and will be shared afterward with everyone who has registered. Closed captioning is available if you should choose to use that. You can enable captions using the controls at the bottom of your screen. We encourage you to submit questions throughout the presentation using the Q&A feature. We'll collect questions as they come in. We may pause briefly between sections, but we would love for you to hold your questions and keep putting them in the Q&A and we'll get to them and make time at the end of this presentation to address them. If we aren't able to get to every question today, no worries at all. Staff will be in touch directly, and we will also make sure to address them as efficiently as possible in our follow-up next week. To briefly orient you to the hour ahead, we'll introduce the Greater Philadelphia Land Protection Program, share the vision and priorities that guide this work, walk through upcoming funding and engagement opportunities, introduce the team leading the program, and discuss how you can get involved. With that, I'd like to turn things over to Nick Richardson, our Senior Vice President for Capital Strategies at the Open Space Institute, for his remarks. Thank you, Nick.
Jazz, thanks so much. And hello, everyone. It's great to have you with us today. I'm really looking forward to this hour with you to share more about the Greater Philadelphia Land Protection Program. As Jasmine said, I'm Nick Richardson, the Senior Vice President for Capital Strategies at the Open Space Institute, which is a conservation nonprofit that also supports foundations in implementing conservation programs. And since our founding in 1974, OSI has helped protect 2.5 million acres across the eastern United States through both direct acquisition and through grants and loan programs. And this includes more than 2 decades of partnership with the William Penn Foundation in the Delaware River watershed. We're really excited to be working with the foundation and all of you again to support a major new investment into land protection that's happening in the greater Philadelphia region for us for the first time. And over the next hour, as Jasmine said, we're going to introduce you to the program, provide some more in-depth information about our 2 strategies, and introduce you to some OSI staff who will be your primary contacts for follow-up questions and discussions about the programs and your projects. Before I go any further, I really want to acknowledge the William Penn Foundation and their commitment to land protection in this region. That's what's led to the development of this new grants program. And I'm so pleased to have Nathan Boone and Allison Jones from the foundation with us here today on the panel. And Nate, I wanted to hand it over to you maybe for some opening remarks.
Yeah, thanks, Nick. I appreciate it. And good afternoon, everyone. It's great to see so much interest in in the launch of this fund and in this newest iteration of the William Penn Foundation's commitment to land protection and conservation. As Nick mentioned, I'm Nate Boone. I'm leading the Environment and Public Space grant-making program here at the William Penn Foundation, alongside really an incredible team that includes Allison Jones, who is really the point person on our land protection work. And I have to give credit to her for really engaging with the Open Space Institute in stewarding the development of this exciting new opportunity. Certainly, all thanks are due to the Open Space Institute for hosting today's webinar and for your partnership in launching this Greater Philadelphia Land Protection Program. This is, as I mentioned, a continuation of a legacy of grant making around conservation and land protection here at the William Penn Foundation. We have a long history of being prioritizing quality of life in the Greater Philadelphia region, and conservation is an important aspect of that. Our land conservation objective builds on that history by protecting the lands that sustain our region. We think about in our newly or recently reorganized grant-making strategies for environment and public space. We're really focused on ensuring the environment performs as an asset for communities, not as a liability, not as a burden. And part of that performance as an asset really leans on access to open space and the preservation and availability of open space for all manner of ecological and social and recreational benefits that it provides to our region and our residents. We know those benefits are about protecting wildlife habitat for many or scenic landscapes. They can be about water quality, strengthening climate resilience, certainly healthier communities, and certainly creating those opportunities to connect folks to the outdoors and build that deeper connection with nature. Essential benefits that really make Greater Philadelphia a vital place to live and prosper. So the funding for the Greater Philadelphia Land Protection Program is a part of that. It's one of 12 funding objectives here in the William Penn Foundation. We're really excited to be partnering with the Open Space Institute to leverage their specialized expertise in administering this fund specifically around land protection, acknowledging that decades of experience that Nick lifted up to. That expertise strengthens our approach to land conservation and broadens our geographic reach on projects both as indicated within the urban core of Philadelphia and Camden, as well as the outlying counties where we've had much success in the past. So again, really excited about these opportunities, really grateful for your interest in the program and in the work that everyone is doing. We hope this webinar today gives you a better understanding of the land protection program, and we're excited to see the projects that come forward. So thanks again for your attention. Happy now and at any time throughout this process to answer questions that come up. Of course, deferring to Open Space Institute for their leadership in managing and administering this program. But both Allison and myself remain available for conversations, for meetings, for virtual chats, for anyone that has an idea or question that they'd like to raise. And it's one of the most rewarding parts of the work. So please don't be a stranger. It'd be great to connect and reconnect with many of you. So thanks again, and I'll hand it back over to you, Nick.
Nate, thanks so much. I really appreciate those remarks, the spirit behind them, and both you and Allison being here with us today as we move into this presentation. And thanks so much, Ash, for your comment. Let's keep those going in the chat. So we're going to have some fun. As we get into the presentation, and Jazz mentioned this, I'm sure that questions will come up. I encourage you to ask them, but also maybe wait a couple of minutes because the presentation will unfold and more details will be following on different pieces as we move forward. So use your judgment, fine to put them into the chat. We probably won't address most of them until we get to the end of the presentation and see what needs further discussion when we've got some time set aside to go into that and really focus on and answer your questions. We're also going to spend some more time today. We're also going to have other opportunities in future sessions to talk more about each of the specific programs. There are two programs for the two different geographies, the Philadelphia and Camden geography and the outer counties, and we'll explain more about that. And we have follow-on presentations that will be coming that get into more specifics on each of those. So if you have specific grant-related questions, those will be great additional webinars to attend. And again, we'll share more information on those throughout the presentation today. I want to take a minute just to talk about the Greater Philadelphia region and the long history of land protection and the development of open space and parks and trails that exists here. That's often been the result of communities, neighbors, strong local land trusts, and other partners galvanizing broader support to protect lands and to figure out how to steward them for the long term. And as a result, many people in Philadelphia, Camden, and surrounding counties have a park or a trail close by that they can walk or hike in nature, ride their bike through, or where they can gather and celebrate together. This is sort of personally meaningful to me. I don't live in Philadelphia anymore, but I grew up there and at 18th and McKean, for people who know South Philly, and then later in Mount Airy. And so just there are particular places and spaces within the city that are personally really meaningful for me. And I know that's true for everybody who lives in this geography and in this place. We also know that there's still a lot more work to be done. There are still many neighborhoods and communities that lack sufficient secure green space or are still disconnected from their waterfronts and their riverways. This stifles community and economic opportunity. And the pressures of development, increasingly severe weather, and the high costs of maintaining and stewarding lands that are protected only adds to the challenge and importance of land protection work today. Philadelphia and Camden and surrounding communities also have an incredible array of community-based land organizations and affiliated groups and networks. It's really extraordinary. And many of you are on the call with us today, and thank you so much for your work. These conversations about ecology, equity, public access are not new. They build on decades of effort, your effort, sometimes generations of effort and organizing. So our approach in facilitating this grant fund with the William Penn Foundation will be to elevate your work by providing grants for land protection projects, planning and transaction support, and other technical assistance to advance your high impact transformational projects. Next slide, Jazz, if you can get, thank you. Through the Greater Philadelphia Land Protection Program, we're going to be deploying $6 million in funds over the next 3 years to support land protection projects. And this is a first investment by the William Penn Foundation in a land protection objective that has an overall goal of 3,300 acres of land protection within the region over the next 10 years. The map on this slide shows the overall grant program geography, which includes Philadelphia and Camden in the core, and then an outer counties region that Nate described with four additional counties in Pennsylvania and New Jersey each. The acreage goals that are on this slide apply to the whole region. And there are also specific goals around investing in capacity and creating the conditions for future protection that are specific to Philadelphia and Camden. And we'll talk more about these differences later on in the presentation, what it means in terms of our approach. The program is designed to support projects that address one or more of these themes. So the first is equitable access to open space. Second is ecological health of the region, including biodiversity and connectivity. And the third is climate resilience for communities. And obviously, projects oftentimes will have benefits and impacts that address all three of these or multiple of these. That's exciting, and we're looking for support an array of projects that in total really kind of can enhance and strengthen impact in terms of these goals. On this slide, we talk a little bit about the different strategies that we're going to get into a lot more detail on in a moment. Essentially, this reflects and is the result of these two approaches are the result of a lot of listening and learning that we've done over the last year and a half or so to understand what are the opportunities and needs within the region, what are the starting places, what are the existing capacities, and also the specific barriers that exist within Philadelphia and Camden, and then the outer county communities. And this design and strategy recognizes that there are differences and that different approaches might be needed in order to create the conditions for the impacts that we're seeking to have through this fund. And so we're taking these two different approaches, and as a result, the entry point will look different depending on whether your work is within Philadelphia and Camden or in the surrounding counties. In Philadelphia and Camden, we start with a cohort process to support shared learning, exploration of the needs and barriers for land protection in these two cities, which will then lead into a round of capacity building grants and then to grants for land protection projects more broadly. In the outer counties, we're going to start with land protection project grants given in the existing pipeline of projects and the state of play, and then a round of catalyst and planning grants that goes alongside that to support the development of additional strategies and to build out some planning and goals around land protection within these communities. Again, we've developed these two different approaches to match what we've learned from conversations with many partners, many of you who are on the call today throughout the region, and to create the conditions for transformational projects to come forward in both geographies. So that's the shape of the program overall. I know it's a lot to take in, and we will be diving much more deeply into it now. So I'd now like to turn it over to my colleague, Aisha Rodriguez, to share more about the Philadelphia and Camden program.
Thanks, Nick, and thank you again, everyone, for joining us today. Before we dive into the Philadelphia and Camden elements of this program, I'd like to take a moment just to do some quick introductions. My name is Aisha Rodriguez, and I am the Senior Associate of Strategic Projects at OSI. I will serve as the primary contact for any and all inquiries regarding the Philly and Camden elements of this program, and my contact information will be shared later in this webinar. Also on our team is Jessica Watson, the Vice President of Conservation Communities. And last but certainly not least, we are so glad to announce that we are partnering with a local facilitator as a key part of this initiative. OSI is extremely glad to expand into urban conservation, and we value learning from those who work deeply embedded in the communities that we will be working in and with. Dwayne Wharton and the Just Strategies team have deep roots and relationships in both Philly and New Jersey, with a long track record of bringing in fragmented stakeholders into honest, productive conversation while ensuring that the process leads to actionable next steps. And I'd actually like to invite Dwayne to share a few words about and further introduce himself and the Just Strategies team.
Yeah, thanks, Aisha. Good afternoon, I believe now, everyone. My name is Dwayne Wharton, as Aisha said, the principal at Just Strategies. We are a mission-driven consulting firm that's based in Philadelphia, but we do work around the country on a number of issues, specifically a few things in New Jersey worth elevating. We're just wrapping up our support for the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation JEGNA Advisory Council, where we helped lead that for 5 years. We supported the New Jersey Institute for Social Justice and their reparations campaign, which is now making its way into the legislature. We just wrapped up City of Philadelphia Food and Nutrition Security Plan, and we've been working with William Penn over the years with a few different community and equity-facing efforts. So I'm just saying that to kind of qualify that we're excited for this cohort, and mostly around the opportunities around strategic capacity building. And our role in this effort is to really try to help support Jessica and Aisha and to ensure that there is good reflection and adaptive leadership and really continuous improvement for organizations. We're going to talk more about that. But we partner with OSI to plan and coordinate the cohort experience. We'll be developing the learning activities and the tools and serve as a resource to the participants, helping to guide discussion, but also how to apply that to their respective organizations. We really just want to help create an inclusive space that's going to foster honest dialogue and real knowledge exchange, and real solid peer learning. So we're looking forward to moving this work forward. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Dwayne. So as we previously mentioned, this program has been designed to respond to the unique needs of both the outer counties and the cities of Philadelphia and Camden. We're very aware that urban conservation practices are going to look, in fact, need to look very different than those utilized in our traditional regions in which land trusts have previously and currently work in. To date, we have prioritized learning from community-based organizations, specifically around the city-specific barriers and tools used for land protection efforts. We've heard from many groups about the limitations, such as policy constraints, limited stewardship capacity, restoration needs, the high cost in a highly parcelized landscape, among many, many others. Additionally, when we talk with organizations across Philadelphia and Camden, one thing comes through pretty clearly. There's an extensive network of organizations that are already deeply committed to increasing land protection within the cities, and many have faced similar challenges to securing these spaces. People doing adjacent work, gardens, open space preservation, land access advocacy, neighborhood stewardship, often are working on parallel efforts, but are not always in conversation with one another. So this key current is why we're forming the program the way that we are. We recognize that the work has been happening and we want to support the field, recognizing that with some support and some resources, new things become possible. Next slide, please. Thanks. In response to these really wonderful learnings from these conversations that we've been having, we have designed the program to contain 3 key elements: the Philadelphia and Camden Community Land Leadership Cohort, neighborhood conservation grants, and capital or acquisition funding. Recognizing the wide array of barriers, we want to make some space for organizations that are coming at land protection from different angles to convene, build some shared language and relationships with one another, and move into solution-oriented conversations to start addressing some of these barriers. Neighborhood conservation grants will be made available to support the solution ideation that may result from these conversations and will open later this fall to eligible organizations in the cities of Philly and Camden. And last but not least, capital funding to follow planning work and fund ready projects will become available in later phase of this program in 2027. So I'd like to take a moment to go a little bit more into detail on the land leadership cohort, or what we're calling the LLC. This cohort will participate in 3 full-day convenings to be in conversation and community with peer organizations. As you've heard a little bit about, OSI will be leading this initiative, but Dwayne Wharton will be the key facilitator of these cohort convenings, ensuring an equity-centered approach and incorporation of that much needed local context. We are aiming for 10 to 15 organizations to participate. We plan to be intentional about geographic balance between Philly and Camden to increase cross-city learning opportunities. And additionally, we're hoping to prioritize building a cohort that includes organizations that have experienced historic disinvestment and face barriers to land tenure, as well as organizations with the capacity, experience, or interest in holding land long-term. As we previously mentioned, capital investment in Philly and Camden will come later, but we're hoping that it'll be shaped in part by what we learned together through these convenings. If you're interested in joining the LLC, we welcome you to complete a statement of interest. The statement of interest, or SOI, will be open from July 10th through August 7th and can be found on our Mapping Resource Center, which you'll learn a little bit more about later today. The SOI really is serving as an opportunity to share with us more about the issues you are facing as they relate to land protection, stewardship, and security, the efforts that you may have been involved in to date, and to really tell us about the community that you're part of and that you serve. We want to learn from you all in order to design a convening structure that is really additive to the existing efforts and respond to the needs that you voice. Additionally, within the OSI, you will find more information on the 3 convening themes and objectives, as well as some information around our stipend support. We'd like to be clear, we're not necessarily looking for organizations with a clear blueprint on how to do this work or the largest budgets or highest capacity. We're really looking for those who are deeply embedded in this work. If you're part of a community garden network, neighborhood groups fighting to hold lands, or part of the land trust community, we'd strongly encourage you to apply. If accessibility is a concern, whether it's language, format, or time, please reach out. We want to remove any barriers, not create more of them. So in addition to the cohorts, this fall we will be opening the neighborhood conservation grants. And these will be focused on supporting and advancing planning, partnership development, or early stage project work that will increase the likelihood of permanent land protection in the cities of Philadelphia and Camden. To be eligible, proposed projects must contribute to a broader vision for community-centered land protection and should extend beyond a single parcel or standalone effort. Collaborative proposals are encouraged, and grant amounts will vary based on the scope and level of partnership, but you can expect awards to range from $15,000 to $40,000. Eligible projects include development of landholding models, including conservation or community land trusts, equity and anti-displacement assessments, and prioritization efforts for at-risk parcels or lots. Additional eligibility criteria, application guidance, and other details will be shared later this fall as well. So if you'd like to learn more, we will have a follow-up information session specifically focused on Philly and Camden on July 23rd, so exactly 2 weeks from today. A registration link, I believe, is just shared in the chat, but also will be shared shortly after this webinar via email. In that session, we will dive deeper into the SOI, what to expect in the convenings, and make space for a larger discussion together. Some key dates to note. The LLC will have an orientation session on September 10th, and we plan to have the 3 in-person convenings on October 8th, November 12th, and December 17th. Neighborhood conservation grants will be open from November 5th through January 31st, 2027. And as previously mentioned, a lot more information will be coming later this fall. If you have any questions, please feel free to use the chat function for the Q&A session that will be at the end of this webinar, or reach out to me directly. Thank you so much. And now I will pass to Bill to talk about the outer counties.
Thank you, Aisha, and hello, everyone. Um, the second major strategy in this two-part initiative is for us to provide grants for land protection and planning in the 8 outer counties surrounding Philadelphia and Camden City. So the outer counties team includes myself, Bill Rawlick. I'll be overseeing capital and transaction grants, and Hallie Schwab, our uh, OSI planning manager, will be overseeing catalyst grants. And today we're just giving you a brief overview, but you'll be able to learn much more later this summer in our upcoming webinar and RFP. And Hallie will provide a detailed timeline for those events below. Next slide. So the outer counties geography includes 4 counties in New Jersey and 4 in Pennsylvania. And as noted, Philadelphia and Camden City are covered separately in the first strategy that Aisha just presented. But you can see that land protection in our outer counties will extend to the urban areas and elevate the fund's goals there. Next slide. So I'll go over the types of grants that are available. So capital grants are larger grants for land protection or to acquire fee simple protection of fee land or conservation easements. And these are very similar to our traditional re-grants that OSI has done for decades in this area. And catalyst grants are for planning, and Hallie will talk more about them. And transaction grants are kind of startup grants to help cover the costs of initial program development and to assess feasibility before applying for a capital grant. Next slide. So our overall goals in this next 3 years are to protect at least 1,000 acres of the land. And over the 10 years of this initiative, we hope to protect at least 3,000 acres with an emphasis on increasing equitable access to open space, preserving critical ecological resources, and enhancing climate resilience for communities. Next slide. And then when we look at scoring of our capital grants, projects are evaluated for contributions to our fund priorities, equitable access, ecology, and climate. But it's not necessary to advance all 3 goals. Applicants may select a primary benefit category aligned with one of the fund's priorities. And to really be successful, though, when you focus on one major primary priority, the projects really need to score well and demonstrate contributions highly in that primary category, or demonstrate benefits evenly across 3 categories. Just a minute. And another factor is that projects should relate to a larger plan. They shouldn't really be, we want to see a larger impact at the end of the 10 years of this fund. And small and isolated projects probably won't score as well. Next. So the types of projects that would be eligible, and this is just an example. You shouldn't be limited to this list, but greenways, parks, trails, and water trails that increase access to open space, projects that expand equitable access, forested parcels that build on larger forest blocks that have a climate benefit, marshlands, floodplains, and parcels affected by sea level rise, And we're always looking for increasing connectivity to have bigger impacts. So projects that expand connectivity joining other protected lands. Next slide. So some key points about this fund. We in this first round, we have about 1.2 million available for capital grants. Our match goal is 4-to-1, although there may be some flexibility if you demonstrate greater need or high project quality. But a 4-to-1 grant means that for every fund dollar you receive, 4 outside dollars need to come in from other sources. And project readiness is important. Projects must close within 18 months. Typically, readiness means that you have an appraisal, have made an offer that's been accepted by a seller, and you're well on your way toward assessing feasibility through title and other factors so that you'll be in a good position to close. If you're not ready, it's a good idea to just wait and continue working on the project and apply in a future round. And once your grant is approved, OSI will provide a due diligence checklist of documents that we will review and consider before we wire out funds. And then lastly, transaction grants are small grants to initiate projects. They're up to $25,000. They provide information required to allow applicants to make an offer to the seller or to apply for a capital grant. Can cover one appraisal, title, or environmental assessment. And there's a shorter, much simpler application than our full capital grant application. And they'll be quickly reviewed on a rolling basis. So thank you. And I'll pass it on to Hallie.
Thank you, Bill, and good afternoon, everyone. So as Bill introduced, Catalyst grants support broad-scale conservation planning with the goals of accelerating the rate and effectiveness of land protection, ensuring durable long-term stewardship of conserved lands, elevating community voices and leadership in conservation decisions, and spurring new investment in land protection. Our goal is to fund planning projects that lay the foundation for meaningful conservation outcomes aligned with the fund priorities of enhancing equitable access to open space, preserving critical ecological resources, or bolstering community resilience to climate impacts. And when we say that projects should be conducted at a broad scale, we're looking for impacts at the scale of a neighborhood, town, watershed, county, or corridor, rather than projects focused on a single property. Next slide, please. Catalyst grants can fund a range of activities that contribute to the development of conservation strategy or that strengthen partner capacity to achieve conservation outcomes. And we've listed some eligible uses of grant funds here, but you're certainly not limited. Potential Catalyst projects could include activities such as spatial analysis and mapping to refine land protection targets and priorities, convening partners to create a shared conservation vision, or hosting conversations to elucidate community priorities around open space preservation and stewardship. We also encourage applicants to consider using Catalyst grants as a vehicle to tee up projects for future OSI capital proposals or lay the groundwork for implementation through other funding sources. Next slide. Thank you. So Catalyst grants are open to nonprofits, tribal governments, and municipalities. In round one, up to $140,000 are available for Catalyst grants, and applicants may request up to $20,000 per proposal. And there is no match requirement for Catalyst grants. Projects should be designed to be completed within 12 to 18 months. Thank you. So that was just a snapshot of the two of the funding opportunities in the outer counties. We'll conclude this section with some key dates for the Outer Counties program and let you know where you can go for more information coming up. So the Outer Counties grant round will open on August 12th. About 2 weeks later, on August 20th, we'll hold an applicant webinar delving into much greater detail on the eligibility and criteria for capital and catalyst grants. We will accept applications through September 25th, and applicants will be notified about grant decisions by the end of the year. The full Outer Counties request for proposals, again with more details on grant eligibility, program priorities, and criteria, will be made available on OSI's fund webpage when it's released in early August. Much of the information shared on today's webinar is up on the website now, and we will post the recording from today's session there as well. Also on the website, you'll find a link to the Greater Philadelphia Mapping Resource Center, which Aisha mentioned earlier in the presentation. OSI designed the Mapping Resource Center to assist applicants with project planning and proposal development. As you heard, you'll also find the Statement of Interest form and more information about that on the Mapping Resource Center. And when you're on the Mapping Resource Center, you'll find an interactive map with data layers related to the fund priorities of access, ecology, and climate resilience. And features that allow users to upload project boundaries, to learn more about conservation and community resources, and landscape context surrounding land projects. So this is a great resource already. We'll be adding to it over time and are really excited to engage with all of you and learn more about the data that will be most valuable in understanding the landscape and strengthening your proposals. So again, please mark your calendars and register for our Outer Counties applicant webinar on August 20th. In addition to walking through the grant opportunities in greater detail, we'll provide a more in-depth look at the Mapping Resource Center. And finally, we encourage you to reach out to OSI staff with any questions or to schedule a pre-application conversation. We're so happy to have one-on-one conversations and hope you'll view us as a resource throughout the application process. And the staff contacts are up on your screen now, also available on OSI's website. So thank you so much. And we're really eager to answer some of the questions you've posted in the chat already. Thanks.
Thanks so much, Hallie. And I think at this point, we could probably either just have all the panelists on the side, Jazz, or take the slides down even. Yeah, I think that's great. And we're going to manage questions and answers here, both in the chat, and then there's the Q&A function, and I see people are using both, which is great. And we have a little bit more time for questions and answers than we had anticipated, which is also great. So I'm just going to start to run through them, and I'll either answer them or guide them to folks who might be in a good position to take them on. So this first one in the question and answer I see is from Melvin Powell. Is there any consideration for land protection as it relates to urban environments? In comparison to Camden, land work would be significantly less square footage than Philadelphia. Additionally, would this target privately owned or publicly owned land? And Matt, thanks for that comment in the chat about the scheduling. So Melvin, I think just to start and answer your question, and again, I think Aisha and Jessica would be great follow-ups if you have specific project questions or want to connect more. But yeah, we really do recognize that there are distinctions and differences between Camden and Philadelphia in terms of land base needs, funding sources, neighborhoods, all those things that we're still very much in a learning mode about those differences and connecting with organizations in all places. We understand that within Philadelphia and Camden, and compared with the outer counties, we're going to have a very different profile in terms of the acreage of projects, generally speaking, and the program design reflects that and understands that. If I would be, I would be surprised if it's more than 5 or 10% of the total acreage goal at the most happens in Philadelphia and Camden. That would be more than I would expect, and yet we're planning to target roughly 50% of the funding towards Philadelphia and Camden, and 50% of the funding over the course of the whole effort to the outer counties. So there's a recognition that those land bases are different, the costs are different, and that impact will take a different form, and acreage will not be a very good measure of it in a lot of ways when we're talking about, or not certainly not the sole measure of it in a lot of ways when we're talking about projects that will happen in Philadelphia and in Camden too. On the question of privately owned versus publicly owned land, it's an interesting one, and I think it would be, we'd want to learn more about the project in particular. Um, this funding could be accessible to support projects that end up in municipal ownership, so public ownership. I think it would be less likely that we would fund a project that was already owned by a government or a municipality, but certainly something that we could look at and consider. So I think the answer to the question is, get in touch with us and tell us more about it. There's another question that I see. Oh, sorry. I just got a note that my camera was off. Let me get that back on. Thank you. Um, my apologies. And then there's a question here, is the capital grant only for non-Philadelphia and Camden communities? And Aisha, I think I'm just going to hand that one to you to answer.
Thanks, Nick. And appreciate everyone and their very thoughtful questions in the chat. So for the capital grant, we're hoping that this will be a phased approach and we will basically open a capital grant round in late 2027. The details you've heard about the upcoming capital grant round, yes, is limited to the outer counties for this year in particular.
But we do plan, and capital granting is a planned and substantial part of the investment that's going to be made into Philadelphia and Camden. Great. Uh, Frank has a question about transaction grants. What is the window to submit an application, and is there a match requirement? Frank, we're still figuring out the exact timeline on those, and I think we'll have more information to share at the upcoming webinar that's specific to the outer counties. There isn't a match requirement, and so it's a much more sort of just directed at a particular expense that you might have to help further a transaction the way Bill described. So yeah, different set of requirements, and we'll go into that more and have a timeline to share with you at that upcoming webinar. Lizzie is asking a question on the Philadelphia Camden track. Do you anticipate that future capital funding will be limited to those organizations who participate in the cohort or capacity support stages? Aisha, do you want to take that one?
Thanks, Lizzie. So for the future capital funding, where this will be released through an open request for proposals in a very similar process that was outlined for the outer counties in terms of how it's rolling out. We're hoping to learn from the cohort participants really what should be informed in that process, right? Like what we should be looking at, how we should go about the design. So right now it's more of a learning phase on our end to inform what this could and should look like, but it will be open to eligible organizations across the two cities.
Great, thank you. I'm just going to keep rolling through these because people keep asking different questions, which is great, and bringing in new things. We have a question from Dimka. Are growers that are land stewards able to apply for the grants? Both Camden and Philly have a lot of land stewards that also grow produce to combat food insecurity while protecting the land. Aisha, do you want to take that one, or I could take a stab at it if you'd like?
Go for it, Nick.
Yeah. Thank you. And Dimka, I think we had a chance to meet you on a visit recently and be a part of a small group you were running. I really appreciated that. I think the answer here is yes, but there is the sort of caveat is that there is a permanence or durability of protection question that's really important when we get into those actual capital projects when you're moving into investing in a place for permanent protection. So there needs to be a steward of that of the easement or of the land protection in addition to a steward of the land. And in that we probably need a qualifying nonprofit or other entity. It is something that OSI has worked on in other places to help to build and grow those entities. Jessica runs a team that has a citizen action program, the longest standing program at OSI actually, that does fiscal sponsorship and supports the development of these a lot of it focusing on land tenure. I don't know if you want to add, Jessica, anything, but
Yeah, I mean, I think that we are definitely envisioning in this process and in the cohort, sort of identifying ways to kind of offer technical assistance and a suite of resources that can support getting to the point where all of the pieces kind of come together, and that's part of the design.
Great. And again, I think we're happy to go deeper on that in additional conversations. So the next one is just a question. Hallie had mentioned catalyst grants were for projects ready in 12 to 18 months. Bill mentioned the same timeline for capital grants. Are those two different timeframes, or would there be a potential overlap with the grants occurring simultaneously? Um, yeah, Hallie, Bill, do you want to take a stab at that?
Sure. As we discussed, the requests for proposals for both Catalyst and Capital are happening simultaneously, so you can apply for one or the other or both types of grants if you have eligible projects. They're not different timelines, but I'll say that the difference is one of the differences is if you're awarded a Catalyst grant, you get the full funding right up front when the project starts, and you can design your project to take a year or a year and a half. And Bill can build on this, but in the capital side, we're looking for projects that will be completed within that time period as well. So it's I hope that distinction helps, but Bill, what would you add?
Yeah, so we release the funds for capital grants at closing of the project. So the catalyst grants are a little different in that you get the money in a lump sum and work from it. But the capital grants are large grants and they'd be available at closing. They'd be awarded and you'd work on the project, but actually dispersed at closing.
Great. Thanks so much, Bill and Hallie. I'm going to switch over to the chat for a second because Jared has just asked a question about some curiosity about any similar land protection initiatives in other metro areas that OSI has worked on, or is this a new process and approach for us? And I think the answer is yes to both of those, Jared. We have worked on urban land protection in different ways and different geographies. As I mentioned, Jessica leads a program, Citizen Action, that's been working with urban land work in New York City for decades. Um, and and we have done work on resilient communities and sort of building conversations around conservation, land protection. Aisha's led work in Port Jervis, and we've been in other smaller cities in the Hudson Valley for years. But this is also a new step for us into something of this scale, and thinking about how what success looks like and how we can best kind of support and facilitate land protection across a geography of this size with this set of resources, this level of investment from William Penn. So yes, it builds on work that we've done, but it is also feels very much like a new strategy, a new approach, a new chapter of work for OSI, something that we're really excited about. Our board, our executive director, CEO is very excited about, but is definitely we recognize as is something that we're stretching into, and we'll be learning a lot as we go through the process and do this work with you, which is really part of why it's so exciting for us. And then here back in the Q&A, Jeannie Ortiz has a question. Hi, Jeannie. Is there any consideration for an urgent or fast track land protection opportunity given that parcels can go very quickly in high demand neighborhoods? Yes, the flow of the capital for this fund is predetermined, and it is going to come out, over time. So we are setting up our grant rounds to be able to deploy and make available the funding that we have when we have it in order to achieve protection outcomes. But I think everybody recognizes that there are that time sometimes creates other circumstances on land protection work and other kinds of work too. And we have a separate program with the William Penn Foundation that's a lending vehicle to provide access to bridge financing to support projects and programs that do green stormwater infrastructure on the one hand, and support land protection outcomes on the other. We work closely with Nathan on that, and I think if there are projects that are coming up that are very much on an urgent need to act now timeline, I think that grant program would be a great place for us to be engaging with you to try to bridge this. And we will try to create flexibility, but we also want to balance that with having clear rules of accountability, transparency, and making sure everybody has equal access to funding, or to the application process and to be considered for funding when those opportunities come up. So if there are fast track projects or questions, I would encourage folks to get in touch with us. And again, that lending program might be a great way to address that bridge. I've got a question here from Wyatt. Are there restrictions on accreditation status for eligible applicants? For example, does a land trust need to hold accreditation for the LTA to submit competitive applications? Does anybody else want to take this one? Okay.
Yeah, I can take it. Well, it's certainly always desirable to be accredited. And, if you're on the path to accreditation, we can generally work with you. And I think we'll have a case-by-case conversations on that question, depending on the project.
Yeah, thanks so much, Bill. Just to elaborate on that a little bit further, and for folks who on the call who may not be familiar with accreditation, this is the Land Trust Alliance, which is a national body that sort of supports and oversees land protection work that happen, and the land trust community has an accreditation process, a sort of set of steps that they can go through and certify your organization to make sure you're compliant in a number of ways. And so that's that accreditation that Wyatt's referring to. It's not a requirement. Accreditation is always the easiest way for us to understand when we're talking about a capital project, does a land trust meet a certain set of standards? But we are also committed to evaluating that in different ways. So as Bill described, we like to use the term accredited on the path to accreditation, which means an organization is sort of moving in that direction and understands what those requirements are and is working towards fulfilling them, and becoming accredited, or acting and working consistent with LTA accreditation practices also.
Right.
Another way that we frame it. So we're flexible about the actual accreditation, but there are a lot of things in that accreditation that we would be looking for regardless in terms of evaluating how strong an organization is to take on a piece of land or to complete a project. So then we have another question on the outer counties. Oh, I see, an accreditation with other organizations. Wyatt, thanks. I think would be great to connect with Bill about that, and he can probably go in deeper with you on that set of questions about other forms of accreditation too. So another question for the Outer Counties Capital Grant Program: is there a timeline for future grant rounds? We do have a timeline in place. We haven't sort of solidified or kind of nailed down precisely when the next round will be. But we are looking at running grant rounds roughly every year. I think it'll be a little bit more, it might be a little bit spaced out a little bit more than a year's time over this first grant of the program. But I think it'd be, for planning purposes, I think it's reasonable to say that roughly annually we'll be running a grant round in this first phase. Great. I see that is all of the questions that have kind of come through the Q&A section, and it looks like in the chat as well. We're just about 5 minutes before the end. think at this point, I might turn it back over to you, Jasmine, to um, send us on our way. And everyone, I just want to say thanks again for coming and joining us. There was a question about the slides and being able to share those, and I think we can. So we'll make sure to get those out along with along with the recording. But anyway, Jess, I might be. Let me just hand it over to you to close us out. Thanks again, everyone.
Thank you, Nick, and thank you, everybody. Everybody on our panel and everybody in our audience. We truly appreciate you being here. This was an overview of the program as an overall. You've gotten the two initiatives that we're pressing forward with and trying to push the paddle on, right? And there will be, just to reiterate, there will be an information session, a Q&A session on the Philadelphia and Camden portion of this program. Once our Outer Counties launches in August, there will be an applicant webinar as well on that in mid-August. We're aiming for August 20th. You will get notifications on that in eBlasts. If you're not subscribed to our OSI webpage and information or need to be, please do, so that we can get that information to you as soon as everything's released. But again, thank you all for joining us today and for your interest in the Greater Philadelphia Land Protection Program. We absolutely recognize that many of you are already doing important work to protect open space, strengthen communities, and advance conservation across this region and advance conservation across the region. And we're grateful for the opportunity to begin and in some cases continue this conversation with you. We will be sending, as mentioned previously, a follow-up email to everyone who is registered. That email will include a link to today's webinar recording, including a PDF of our presentation slide deck that you saw, a summary of key dates and deadlines for you to go ahead and put in your calendars and save the dates that please do save the dates and register for. And of course, resources to our Mapping Resource Center, our web pages, and our staff contact information. If any questions come up after today's session, please do not hesitate to reach out to our program staff. And as Nathan mentioned earlier, to Nathan or Allison, if there's any particular questions that you feel like you want to address with our Penn team. And we're happy to talk through program fit, eligibility, or other considerations as you explore opportunities for you to be able to engage. And on behalf of Open Space Institute and the William Penn Foundation, thank you again for spending time with us. We look forward to working together to advance meaningful land protection and conservation outcomes throughout the Greater Philadelphia region. Have a wonderful afternoon, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.